mix what I like, what I like.
I mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Live healthy.
I mix what I like, what I
We're
like.
here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on imixwhatilike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy likes and other cool things.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I mix what I like. Football, politics of sports, roundtable, back at it. Get in here. Mutanda, Daniel, welcome back. We're expecting Robert any minute. Peace and welcome to those who are here live in the chat, who will see this and hear this later. Welcome. Welcome to you as well. Please like, share, subscribe, support our Patreon, all the other good stuff. Fellas, how you feeling?
I'm good. Sounding good?
You sound good. Do I sound good? I've been having problems.
You sound clear. You're good.
Right,
The sound's not coming through the AirPods, so that's step one.
Are we good? Am I good?
Oh, it does. Who I sound like that?
No. I'm saying the it's always a problem when people think that they have their mic on, but really the sound is coming through their headphone mic. So you sound like you're coming through your mic. So that's good.
Oh yeah, well good. Yeah. That's been the problem lately. It's been because on this end you can't tell the difference.
Is it you have a Mac? Does it automatically switch?
No, because that's been the thing. There's something with the browser and StreamYard that will upset. So like I can look at it now, it'll be reading, it's reading my mic and the levels are coming through. But then if I don't
the most annoying thing about StreamYard is that I have to use Google Chrome. I hate Google Chrome.
Well, that too.
Let me use Safari in peace.
Yeah. and do a little more so that we can do a little more with the studio. Bring up different elements more than one at a time. You know, they could do a little bit. They're caked up at this point. They got to be caked up at this point.
For sure.
So, you know, I know Robert didn't assign us homework and is not like, where is he?
Are we sure that he's not thinking 6 Eastern? So maybe someone.
I thought we said 5:30. I'm sending it. I sent him a message.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to pay attention to the instructions.
Brazil is an African place, so you know it runs behind.
Yeah, and yet people make it to movies and flights. That's always my thing with African time. Like people still make it to their movies and flights, and then talking about, but they're always there. But all right, whatever. It's whatever.
Hold on. Do people make it to movies? Flights for sure, but. A lot of people show up late to the movies.
Yeah, maybe
a lot of
you're
people
probably
show up late.
right. You're probably right about that. Yeah, I like to get you. You're probably right about that.
Oh well, go for it.
There's a slight chance, as we segue into the topic of the day, that I'm making every effort to attend my first major football game in person. I think. Well. No disrespect. No, I can't say this. Not. It would be the most major. As we try to set it up, I'm trying to get to see Mbappé live this year. In his new home, like in
so
Spain.
You're going to Madrid?
Where there's an outside effort being made to make that happen. There's an attempt to move the enormous family ship in that direction to steer us from the boiler room, from the kitchen.
Hang on a minute. Are you saying, by the way, is my sound okay? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Are you saying it's fine? This guy.
It's not a mic.
It's not a mic.
We hear you well, but it's not.
Yeah, it's fine. It's
fine. The family, are we talking like relocation?
Oh no.
Okay.
There's
I didn't know he said
no. A few years ago, because of school schedules and birthday schedules, a few years ago, we went on a big family trip during my youngest daughter's birthday. So she's gotten it in her head that should happen every year. So, she, with no concept of cost and effort and all of that, she's like, it should just be happening.
Yeah.
So
y'all did that to yourself.
You guys have set a standard. Yeah. So,
we did. And she is training. I just got video footage from her training sessions in Panama with some organized boys squad and a former professional coach. So she's trying to earn, I said, if you want to see Mbappé, you got to train like Mbappé.
Oh shit.
No, so we'll see. That there's a shot, and then we did find there's a game. I think they played Getafe at home. I think it was. If I'm saying that correctly. They got and the cost of the tickets so far are not super crazy. In fact, it's cheaper to see them at the Bernabeu than it is to see them on the road, apparently. Which
they have 100,000 ish in their stadium, so you might be sitting with the gods, as they say, but you'll be there.
Oh well, it'll be the only time I've been in a stadium with that many people has been when I saw, and this is when they were all really good, Miami playing Penn State in the early 90s in Miami's, I think they were still in the Orange Bowl at the time. And they had well over, I think they announced like 90,000, but I think I feel like people were sneaking in. It was so packed in there. I've never experienced anything. It was crazy. So I don't know.
College sports is the closest in America that you get to like a football type atmosphere.
Yeah, it was bananas. Yeah, I still remember it. Robert, welcome. By the way, everybody, the links to all of our roundtables work. I don't do them justice with these intros. Is in the show description. Trainers, authors, journalists, experts, one and all. Robert, how you feeling? Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here. How you guys doing?
I'm well.
How you doing, Robert?
Matanda, how you doing?
Blessed.
We're going to talk about Enzo.
Oh my God.
add that to the list, actually.
How do you all want to start? Where would you, how would you all?
I want to start very briefly.
Okay.
To frame it, because this didn't happen last time.
We're working on it, Elon. We're working on it. Give the show a name. I told them.
Put some suggestions in the chat. What
should the show be called?
Not that your chat will be listened to, but give us some options.
Yeah. Interrupting Mutanda. That's what we're going to call it.
No, real quick, and then I'll throw it back to everybody. But because how we want to start, I want to be very clear about what I will be presenting and where I'm coming from, because we've gone around and around and around, it seems like, on some things. And so I want to be very clear so that not that anybody's been called out of their name. I think there's been a lot of respect here for the vote, but I also want to be very clear that to what degree that we disagree, there's a specific point that we disagree on, and that's going to be discussed. So for me, this subject of, footballers and how they differ from other from players in other sports is an important one, in the context of, and I think the genesis of all this was, again, we had a show discussing the aftermath of the U.S. men and their Copa exit, right? And then, of course, what comes up, as often does in after particularly the men lose, but even the women as well, and we'll get into this. It's certainly part of what I'll present as well. What ends up happening in this country is a whole bunch of statements, right, about the level of play here, the coaches, the players, any number of things. And one of the things that comes up often, or actually less often than for me than I experience, but it still comes up, and it's not a new argument, is this concept of the quote unquote, I'm using what other people say, the best athletes not playing soccer. And that's sort of the reason as to why the U.S. is in the position they are in terms of the global game. And I refute that. So what I'm essentially saying, what I'll present today, and before I turn it back over, is not that the United States can't produce certainly more and higher quality players, given the changes that everybody on this panel would like to see regarding structures around the game that obviously are tightly linked with structures, societal structures that allow for more people to experience the game, right? I'm totally aligned with that. So when Jared started off last show with all of the things in terms of the social construct of who's allowed to participate in certain sports, there's little to no disagreement from myself or Daniel on that part. Where the disagreement comes is where now we start talking about the actual, when we dive deeper. So that's one level, right? There's a social construct level, and then there's another level of why is it, and this is an objective analysis. As much as possible, my things today are not going to be subjective. So why is it that world football contains a, relative to other sports, contains such a variance in terms of profiles that play, and not just profiles that play, also profiles that have profound success. And that's where I'm coming from, which is this sport is different in the sense that it affords a wide range of people to excel in a way that other sports do not, particularly sports dominated by Americans, especially, or more prominent in this country, given the NFL and the NBA. That's my framing for what I'm presenting today.
Okay. Does anybody want to follow up or respond to that?
I'm not even sure where to begin. I mean, the last thing I think we should do is to rehash what's taken place over the past one or two sessions about quote unquote the good athlete, right? I'm not sure that's a particularly constructive way to approach things. I mean, my reaction through all of this has been that we're being distracted. That certainly from my perspective, the issue is why the U.S. men's national team and the sport in general has lagged behind the rest of the world on the men's side. So to synopsize, why is it that in the four dominant sports in the United States, namely baseball, basketball, hockey, and American football, or American rugby, however you want to call it, those sports represent the global standard of excellence for those leagues and those teams. And there's like, 124, 125 teams now scattered throughout those four sports. And football, parenthetical soccer, is not by any stretch of the imagination at the same global standard of excellence as the big five leagues in Europe, namely the UK, Spain, Italy, France, and Germany. And so my question is, why is that the case? And so I think that the issue about the good athlete is beside the point. My point is that based on the structure of the sport in the United States, blacks in particular, but also Hispanics, which are a minority group that's larger than the black population, have been excluded from the sport, whether it's pay to play or whatever the mechanisms. And the token presence of those minorities in MLS is not a satisfactory explanation for why the United States is underperforming. As a matter of fact, I think that the reason that the United States is underperforming is because MLS is there to do exactly that. It's there to make sure that those minority groups do not come into this sport and take this sport to the global standard of excellence. So I think the global standard of excellence for this sport is strategically and purposefully being avoided. So that's my position. And you know from the book that I think that the strategy for how this occurred over the past 30 years can be laid at the doorstep of the National Football League. So that's my position.
Who you have in your book quoted as operating as, well, Professor John Vroom, you quote as saying operates as a natural cartel.
Oh, for sure. Well, actually, all four
in
leagues, all four of those leagues, those dominant four leagues, operate as natural cartels. All four of them. So now, you know, not without avoiding getting into the antitrust issues.
So reviewing your again before the show, your chapter 4. Again, I largely agree with your point about, and I'd like for us to get into some of the details of this, but how the NFL has operated to suppress the growth of the game of world football in this country and to protect its access to the Black athlete. My question to you, Mutanda and Daniel, just is as we went back and forth within the chat, what makes the sport? Ultimately, we concluded in our back and forth in the chat after last show that, as I understood it, your argument is that the sport of, as it's called soccer here or football, is unique from any other sport. So the broad argument that I was making, that in this country where the best athletes from just in general are encouraged to, from the best athletes in this country from every background are encouraged to every other sport, basically, at the end of the day, that you're saying that in and of itself is not either true or doesn't ultimately have an impact on the quality of players that the United States develops because the sport is itself so unique. And I just don't see it. I don't agree. I don't agree that if you take all of the people that end up doing the best in all of these other sports and train them early on and have a culture that encourages, and to Robert's point, has a financial mechanism that encourages people to play, that you won't get. Again, I'm not saying obviously it doesn't. I'm not saying the exact players that are currently in the NFL or NBA, but those communities that are producing the best athletes in those other sports who don't make it to those professional levels would still likely be producing the higher level or highest level of soccer players in the United States. But you're saying no, because the sports are that different. And I don't understand. So that's the part of the argument I get stuck on, at least currently, if that makes sense.
Let me add a caveat to what Jared just said, because in the book, I make a case I basically speak to the four leagues, and I make a case for the fact that there are certain players, in other words, there's a subset of players in the NFL that are pipelined in the direction of the NFL from their youth. And having grown up in the United States and played sports in the United States, I can tell you that, you know, as a kid growing up, my sports were baseball, American football, and basketball. I did grow up in St. Louis, which also had a quote unquote football culture, meaning soccer. on an equal par, actually, as I grew up, but I just didn't play it. I was in the inner city. That sport did not penetrate the inner city. And so my point is that as I was a kid growing up, I played 3 sports. And I chose basically American football to attempt to play at a higher level because that was a sport that I was best at. And quite frankly, I think that American football is, in terms of ball skills, I don't consider American football to be a ball skills sport foundationally. I think foundationally it's a running sport, and that's best seen by the way the sport evolved away from rugby that was introduced into the United States simultaneously with football, by the way, in the late 1800s. Both of those sports came to the United States from England. And as a matter of fact, until roughly 1910, possibly as late as 1920, there were more people playing football, quote unquote, soccer in the United States than American football or American rugby, the adaptation of rugby that became the NFL's product. The reason I'm bringing that up is because there's also an issue of nomenclature. You know, how did these words, football and soccer, quote unquote, evolve? And that's a separate subject. But it's clear from the literature that's out there that the people that run this country, in the context of the base and superstructure, the people that run this country made a decision that American rugby would become football because it was marketed intentionally with that wording. And as a result, that same group of people marginalized the immigrant populations from Europe that brought football soccer to the United States. So the power and economic influence that stood behind this new concept of American rugby or football came from that milieu of making it an elite sport. I mean, football in the United States, American football in the United States, was played at the Ivy League, at Rutgers, because back in those days, Rutgers was considered an elite institution. And so that sport got support from not just corporate and media side of the country, but also the government side of the country. One of the principal promoters of the sport in the United States was Teddy Roosevelt. And so, having said all that, football soccer was marginalized because they did not have the financial support and economic wherewithal that the quote unquote the other quote sport did. So having said all of that, you know, the subset of American football, namely the quote unquote skilled positions, quarterback, running back, receivers, and cornerbacks, is the target market that I think the NFL is protecting in launching Major League Soccer. They wanted to maintain that pipeline of talent, not just exclude centers, defensive tackles, guards, what have you, all the big players, the linebackers, the bigger players that are typically, you know, found in rugby that have a place in the NFL and college football in the United States. Those people, the larger ones, are not the target market for what I'm talking about in terms of skill set. What I'm saying is that the skill set, a subset of the NFL and even a subset of the NBA, people that are smaller in stature, the Steph Currys of the world, we mentioned, you know, a few others, Muggsy Bogues, we've mentioned others, Allen Iverson. What I'm saying is a subset of the NBA and a subset of the NFL are part of that pipeline into those respective leagues. And that's how they generate billions of dollars of TV contracts. And so having said all of that, what I'm saying is that the discussion about who the better athlete is actually beside the point. The real issue here is why the game has been second tiered, and why and how can we unearth mechanisms to allow it to become first tier and represent the global standard of excellence in the United States, which it does not do today. So that's my pitch.
Daniel, do you want to go before I respond? All right, there's a conflation happening, and I think this is part of the challenge here. And I want to untangle a couple things, because on the one hand, how should I put this? I don't particularly care if the U.S. represents the global standard of soccer in the world. And I'm saying that not because, like, and I say that because I'm not patriotic in that sense. So I'm not like, oh man, screw the EPL. We need to have the best league here. Even though I would enjoy that, that's not, so the fact that there's a community here, there's a culture of football, world football, that's separate from the NFL is fine for me, right? Like the NFL can be the big dog and will likely be the big dog for a long time to come. Fine. That's one. Two, the flattening that's happening that I think is where so that being said, I'm saying this also. When it comes to assessing where the US is at in terms of the quality of players being produced here, whether they ply their trade in the domestic league here or whether they're exported, I don't think on this panel, we've done a good enough job of actually assessing what the level is, right? And typically people don't if they're not in it or they're just watching it casually, because the stigma is it's the US, they don't care about soccer, so they suck, right? That's like one extreme. Or you have the super uber patriotic folks, right, who support the men's national team, the women's national team, who maybe they support the MLS as well, whoever, and they're like, oh man, go USA, we need to be number one, we're going to win the World Cup, right? Which is one extreme, which is also like, I'm not there. I'm like, I'm looking at this. There's another group of folks, right, who's looking at it, and I think who have a better read on things by saying, and this is what I tried to get across at a couple panels ago, by saying, folks, the U.S. is actually better at this game as things currently stand, with all of the flaws, all of the systemic flaws, which I agree with for the most part. The U.S. is better than a lot of people think. And the proof of that is all over the place, right? Because what a lot of people do sometimes is they'll just make claims about soccer here based on a few results, right? Or based on a current result. And there's a lot of, this is my point a couple of shows ago about the hyperbolic statements, right? The U.S. goes out in the Copa, in the group stage of the Copa, the men's national team. Is that bad? Yeah, of course it's bad. Does that mean the program is absolute crap and the players all suck? No, of course not. Right? Now, I say that to say this. So when I hear, and I'll now reference your book, Robert, page 146, the best athletes will still choose basketball as their number one sport. Okay? Because you talk about, this is right after you reference the Big Four, and you reference how the NFL stands to be the league that will be impacted the most by football's evolution toward world-class status. You make a point. This best athletes idea comes up a few times, right? The best athletes will do this. Now, this is why I'm saying it's problematic. When you talk about the best athletes and you just flatline it there, but you don't make a distinction between, what a footballer is, what a basketball player is, what an NFL player is, then you run the risk. What ends up happening, and I think what has happened, even in this conversation, is you miss out on what the qualities are of the players who are currently playing the sport, wherever they are. That's one. And then two, you do a disservice to you do a disservice to what actually it takes to be dominant in this sport, right? Because just from a cultural standpoint, there's something the US is missing, and this conversation of best athletes shows that, as it relates to the rest of the world and playing this sport. Because in other nations who also have, and whether or not they produce, the top NBA players or NFL, but is irrelevant, right? There are other nations who also have at least a segment of their population that is, freakishly big or can jump high or whatever, but they're not necessarily represented in the football. And the examples are everywhere. So how is it, this is the point, the part of what ails the US is being stuck on this best athletes trope without actually defining what that means in terms of football. And that's why I said my whole point today is to objectively to show football functions differently. And if one of the things that has to happen in the US, in addition to all the changes that you've written about, Robert, one of the things that also has to happen is we have to untangle this mentality that does exist here and that does 100% get in the way of having better results right now as things stand. This mentality of basically copying and pasting norms from American sports, especially the NFL, onto world football, because it doesn't work. And as I said before in the last panel, and this was shouted down, this was just went over people's heads, the rest of the world doesn't look at the US and think, oh my goodness, they suck at football because they're not, quote unquote, athletic enough. And when I say the rest of the world, I'm not talking about fans and players. I'm talking about football practitioners. I'm talking about coaches. I'm talking about people who run academies. They're not looking at the US like, yeah. What really ails them is they don't have enough NBA players playing the sport. That ain't it. So I just say that to say, and I'll say it, this is what, because there's a lot of alignment here. There's a lot of alignment. In addition to the social changes, in addition to, yes, of course, making sure that the game is accessible, in addition to having better pipelines, in addition to, solidarity payment, all these things that ail the game here. And quite frankly, one of the last things is this having quote unquote better athletes because the profiles are already there. It's a question of untangling this mentality from US soccer, because then
but why do they?
Yeah, because they would actually produce better players. Go ahead,
I want this point to be clarified, because why do they say, Mutanda, that one of the, because I know that I know that at every level that they talk about, one of the issues they bring up is the pay to play is a barrier.
Who's they? Sorry, who's they? Can you clarify?
All of the experts, all of the pundits that you mentioned, all of the academy people, all of the people on television, all the coaches, all of them point to that as an issue. We got to get rid of this pay to play. It's blocking our access to all the best available players.
Yeah, I'll be very, so it depends. Why do they say that?
Why are they saying that that's an issue if what you're saying is true? Yeah, and then we definitely got to walk away today. I got to know why this sport.
I will get it.
So yeah, let's go.
100%. Right, No. And I'll be clear with you. So this is beautiful, and this is what I was hoping for in the last panel. Here's the little secret about pay to play that a lot of people don't realize and relates to this country or don't want to talk about, right? Pay to play is everywhere in the world. Here's the old thing though. How much people pay and what they pay for is a crucial difference, right? But if you go to there are places, people might be surprised to hear that, like, in South America, to get a tryout or to get onto a team, that there's money exchanging, right? There's fees. It's not like people are playing for free everywhere. And here's the thing is, the people who are paying for free are the very best players, right? Because the club finally decides, hey, yeah, we're going to invest in this kid, right? So pay to play exists everywhere. Here's the problem in the US. The problem in the US, 100%, is that this has been turned into a suburban sport in which what people are paying for is exorbitant, and then what they're getting back is not of the requisite quality. And then, of course, that exists within a system in which there's no clean pipeline from the youth level to the pro level. And really, this is the problem in this country, right? Because everywhere else in the world, really, in the serious, apologies, my phone. In the elite footballing nations, like the very, very top, there's a clear, what they do better than what exists here is that there's a pipeline from the youth game to the pro game. And why? And Robert's detailed a lot of this, right? He's spot on with this, which is where the existence of these clubs, where at the top you have a first team, and then you have youth teams that are under that first team. That changes everything, because what it means is the kids who are starting their journey early on have a first team to look up to and to try to reach, but also the money flows down in terms of the success of the first team. The health of the club depends on that, whether they're able to sell players, even if they don't make a lot of money within their own club. And then with those funds that the first team is getting, they're able to fund the entire program. That's how much of the rest of the world works, right? So when people are talking about pay to play here, yes, having more players that you can reach. And yes, I'm not here to deny that there's a certain there are pockets of this country, many, that need better access to this game. 100%. I know that. And I know that more than anyone. I get it. I just, again, I'm very, even those folks though, it doesn't mean they're correct to the degree that they say this. It doesn't mean that they're correct if they say, oh yeah, we need better athletes playing, because that ain't it. Those are two very different things. They exist together, but they're not necessarily the exact same thing. Hopefully that answers your question.
Can I respond a little bit, adding to the ball of confusion here? First of all, Mutanda, if you are ever thinking about changing professions, because I know that you're a full-time football professional in terms of training and what have you, my suggestion is that you go into politics, because you have a way with words and context. So I'm going to read to you what you read to me. You read to me, the best athletes will still choose basketball as their number one sport. And then you went on to pitch your case. But the following sentence says, which is the context, the NBA will continue to be the highest paid sport per player in the world. In other words, how these sports at the professional level are remunerated, how much money is involved at the league level, determines the attractive power of athletes, period. You don't have to be the best athlete. Athletes. So if you're playing American football, you know what the pie in the sky is for you. Getting a contract with the NFL. You play in the NBA, you choose basketball as a sport, you know what the quote unquote golden handle out there is. You know how much you can potentially get paid. Now, obviously, the number of people who make it, few and far between, right? Same thing for baseball, same thing for hockey. But for MLS, which has been in business for 28 straight years, right? 28 years. MLS's payroll this year for a squad, I think the number is 28. I'm not sure how many. Maybe it's 30. They have a travel squad, whatever it is. Let's say it's 28. 28 players. By the collective bargaining agreement of MLS, the salary cap per team is a little bit more than $5 million per team. Okay, per team. In the English Premier League, the average salary in the English Premier League is a little bit more than £4 million per player. The entire payroll of Major League Soccer is roughly equivalent to the entire payroll of Man City. So there has been a purposeful ratcheting down of money available for players that has impacted not just the dissemination of the sport, but the ability of people who are coming from the bottom of the pyramid to choose a sport and have an incentive to join a sport and go all the way through the pipeline to the pros. That incentive does not exist for this sport in the United States. And that bottom of the pyramid that I'm talking about is largely in the ghettos and barrios of the United States. Now, I don't see how you get around that. It's got nothing to do with who's the better athlete. It's got something to do with the sport. The sport has been excluded.
Yeah, but Robert,
purposely excluded from certain populations of the country.
But this is
the way I think you get around it, Mutanda, is by saying that access to players who would become footballers doesn't require all that Robert is talking about and is not impeded ultimately by what Robert is talking about.
So I would say this. Let me say this. First of all, Robert, I appreciate what your clarification that you just did there is important as it relates to this conversation where we've gone, I think this is show number 3, right? About this like best athletes versus, right? And this is you conveniently leave out in what you said there that I would say, let me put it this way, the requirements to be a top level, to be in the NBA, right? And what that requires is slightly different than what it requires to be a footballer. You agree with that or no?
Mutanda, look, we can sit here.
You agree with that or no?
No, hold on. Let me clarify your own clarification. Mm-hmm. Okay. Nobody here is debating the differences between the sports. All of these sports have requirements. Football, soccer has requirements. Basketball has requirements. American football has requirements. Hockey has requirements. Baseball has requirements. What I'm saying to you is that there is nothing special about football, soccer in terms of its requirements. The requirements are there. What I'm suggesting to you is that the quote unquote pool of players that have access to that sport has been limited. And it's been limited intentionally. And it's not something that happened by chance. It's not something that happened by accident. This was planned and it was executed. And they did a very good job. The execution has worked. I mean, the last television contract that the NFL signed was for 11 years and $110 billion. That value creation proposition that the NFL has worked. That pipeline has been maintained. The pipeline has not been interrupted by any other sport, especially football, soccer. And that was
but Robert, one of Mutanda's key points, Mutanda, has been that soccer or world football is unique in terms of its requirements. And that's what upsets the argument that you're making and that I'm making.
No, but
that's the part that I don't. That's the part I'm still not.
But here's the part. Here's what I think you and I are saying the same thing, Jared.
More or less, yes.
I mean, what I'm saying is that, you know, the access, the quote unquote pipeline of the pool of talent that is available to go into this sport has been purposefully detoured away from the sport. So we don't know where the United States could be. We don't know how the United States could get there. Because certainly over the past 30 years, it's worked extremely well.
Listen, and again, I'm telling you, and I will stop here, but I want to get my little joke off. I'm telling you that, like Glenn Ford, the late great, used to say about U.S. electoral politics, I'm saying about U.S. sports. This country would rather lose with Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden than win with Bernie Sanders. And this country would rather lose with Pulisic than win with Sanchez, Fernandez, Hernandez, Jones, Johnson, and Washington.
I think you're absolutely right.
Daniel, get in here before I tear this up, because this is where it's getting ridiculous.
I mean, Mutanda,
why is that ridiculous?
Are you going to let me speak, Robert, or do you want to?
No, but I mean, you've got to speak sense, Mutanda. I mean, there's got to be some rationality here.
Yeah.
Where's the rationality? How do you get around what has happened to the sport in the United States? You're dancing around that issue.
I'm not.
Oh, no?
You and Jared are taking a sledgehammer to a conversation that requires more of a chisel. Oh. That's the issue.
Oh.
The sledgehammer you're taking, no, because again, you have to hear me and Daniel, but I'm speaking now, but I'm no there. But you have to hear me when I say we have points of agreement here. But I'm in what you just said just now is where your big blinders are, and either you will see this or you won't. And
here's my blinders.
I didn't interrupt you. No, you do have blinders, and I'll tell you exactly what they are.
Okay.
Robert, you wrote a book that details several things. And again, a lot of them I agree with. You also, and in a lot of things that you say, you portray, you make an assessment about the state of the game here that is not quite accurate.
Tell me what I said that isn't accurate. Point by point. Tell me what I said that is not accurate, point by point. Let's be methodical.
When you assess, well, and when I say this, let me preface this by saying, when I say this, you completely squash the argument by calling me a shill for MLS. But I'm only pointing out what, again, you failed to recognize.
Mutanda, the fact that
you're about to do it.
No, but let's deal.
Tell me I'm getting paid. Do you want me to show you the Don Garber's check? I have it here.
But let's deal with the truth here, right? The truth is that you used to work for MLS. That's true, right?
So that
you were a former MLS employee. So I don't know the history of Rising Point. I don't know who backed Rising Point financially. That's another issue. I'd be interested in finding out who backed Rising Point, who's backing your career as a professional trainer and developer of talent. That's another issue
with this. Wow.
No, I'm just asking you. You're challenging my. I want you to go into the book, point by point, and point out to me where the errors have been made, where the oversights are. Do that.
The oversight you're making, Robert. The oversight you're making. I've already told you, and this is what I'm saying, that you don't want to hear it. Right. The oversight you're making is, and again, it's a very specific point. As it relates, and I'm going to say this for the upteenth time, Jared and Daniel, please note this down that I said this again. It's 3:18 p.m. Pacific time, so 6:18 Eastern. I don't know what time it is in Brazil. So I'm saying it again. Robert, you and I have a lot of agreement, and Jared, there's a lot of agreement with all the social stuff, and there's a lot of agreement. Where there's disagreement, and it's important because, like I said in my opening statement, as it relates to still to even like day to day, folks like myself or anyone who works in this game, when we're working with players, we can't change the systems overnight. So we have to deal with the players. And what I'm speaking on is something that's fundamental key to how players are developed here, right? Wherever they are. So the oversight you're making, Robert, and that's constantly made with these conversations is, again, you're flattening everything, right? So you start out with this larger premise of the US is not the global standard in the game. I agree. You then detail why that is. And again, maybe there's some slight disagreements that can be found here and there, but the overall logic is sound. And then you say, well, because the people who run the sport in this country put a lid on it. Again, I agree. As it relates to the pool of players, you're talking about a pipeline of players that, again, you constantly ignore even exists. So that's why, even in previous shows, when I try to tell you—
That's an unfair comment. I have never said that.
Robert, wait a minute. Robert, you took a shot at where he's getting his money, which could be argued as unfair. Let Mutanda at least finish the point here, so we can, because I'm desperately trying to get clarity on his argument. So And then, Robert, I won't interrupt again to let you respond, but please, Mutanda, finish your point.
When I bring up the profiles that exist within soccer spaces here, and whether it's MLS or I won't use MLS, since that's obviously you then accuse everybody of being, which again, please don't do that again. That's disrespectful. If I talk about USL programs or I talk about whatever, I'm the assistant coach for a semi-pro team here, right? So when I talk about the players that we have, and I talk and how good they are, where what you're saying falls short is in assessing exactly how good they are in relation to other places in the world, right? This is my point. So, and arguments that you make about the money involved in the NBA and how that leads basketball players to have something to shoot for. I get that and all that, but it still doesn't deal with the fact that you have a pool of players in this country large enough, if certain things happen, that they would still find success. And oh, by the way, the biggest indicator that your assessment of things isn't spot on is the United States does export players, not at the level of other nations. I understand. MLS does export players. It's not one of the top leagues in the world, but it does export players. If you deny both those things, there's no way you can say you are accurately assessing the state of the game here. And my point is, if we're going to look at what ails this country, you have to accurately assess the issue, right? Because in the end, this leads me to then my point about this idea that, the best athletes are not playing. If you don't clarify what that is, what that means, you lose sight of the fact that one of the things that we have to do to get better is to untangle that idea from the American.
So let's do that. That's the part I'm because that's
I want to
because
do it as well, but I'm responding to what
Mutanda, what Robert is saying is wrapped up in your response, and what I think is lacking in your response is that when you're saying you're acting like this overall pool of young talent that is being suppressed from one sport and corralled into several others is irrelevant, largely because the remaining.
It's not irrelevant. It's not complete. It's not complete.
But how? I understand it's one of a component set of parts to the problem. But when we are saying, when Robert and I are saying the best athletes are encouraged to other sports, and then you and Daniel want to say no, because an athlete for soccer and football is different from these other sports, that's where you lose me in all of this, because I refuse. This is where I get hung up. I will admit I am at this point refusing to believe that a community, I said this last time, that communities that produce top athletes in every other sport they're encouraged or allowed to play in cannot do so in this sport, because it is so unique. But I don't believe that.
I just want to be clear though, Jared, but hold on though, because I hear what you're saying, but I want to be clear. Neither Daniel or myself said Black people cannot succeed in this sport, right? So that's the thing. That's the clever part that you like. Even the way you just framed that suggests that somehow it was said that and you conflate best athletes with,
because you both kept saying, you in particular kept saying it's irrelevant because
Mutanda was about to say what I have written on
okay, go ahead.
Go ahead,
say
it. Jared, you want proof? I'll get into that, but I want Daniel to just go ahead.
So I hear three different conversations at once, which is wildly frustrating, and part of me doesn't even want to have, we've done this for 6-7 hours at this point. Everybody's in their camps. So I'm trying to convince other people of my opinion. It's above me now, as the old meme used to say. But and it's just something that I wrote down. Best athlete equals Black people. So in the American context, most of the time when people say best athlete, they mean Black people. And it's true. You can look at gymnastics that I was just watching the other day, the best athletes are Black people. If it's track, best athletes are black people. NFL, or not even black, Africans. The best athletes are African Americans, okay? Now, the point about football will come in a bit. But when you say our best athletes, and let's just remove the decoding, and let's just say African people, do you mean African people, as in all African people, or do you mean athletes of profiles, or do you mean profiles of athletes that black people already play in the United States? That's kind of the point. So when I hear Mutanda saying, we need to open the pool and different types of things, I'm hearing, how do I word this? Because I've been trying to word it in a way where it's like, someone can understand it, but I don't even know if that's useful at this point. But it's like, if your definition of athlete is completely wed to what it looks like in the NFL, what it looks like in the NBA, what it looks like on a track, what it looks like playing hockey, then once you get into what differentiates football from other sports, be it basketball, the NFL, hockey, etc., in a world where America does care about football, the subset of athletes that are being picked will neglect profiles of athletes that would find success in football. So what needs to be detangled is what the picture of athlete is that's in your mind. And again, best athlete means the type of black person that's in your brain should not. I've heard Steph Curry, I've heard LeBron James, I've heard all of these names, and I even wrote down, is the subset of talent the players themselves, meaning when Robert brought up skill positions in the NFL, and he brought NBA guards like Allen Iverson has been mentioned before, or is it the pool of potential players in the population that, were they incentivized to play American football, would then not be playing basketball, American football? That should be where we are. That it's not trying to take the definitions of athleticism that belong in basketball and football and then immediately copy and paste them to football. What needs to happen is, once the sport is given to everybody, or if the sport is given to everybody, because I'm pessimistic on that point. If you're a coach or somebody who's running an academy, if you come to that place with the mindset of, I'm looking for Tyreek Hill, I'm looking for LeBron James, I'm looking for Patrick Mahomes, and you neglect the profile of maybe a shorter, stockier, chubby kid who just has a skill, vision, passing, whatever it is, that doesn't conform to ideas of best athlete. You could be missing a Raquelme, you could be missing a Guti, you could be missing a Xavi or Busquets, just because you're not attuned to looking at the right thing. And that's the difference here. So best athlete does mean black people, but it also doesn't mean the exact replica of African person who's playing NFL, basketball, etc. Now, Mutanda, I think, could better explain what differentiates football from other sports.
But before he does that, again, and to the people taking shots at me in the chat, all you've done is proven you did not pay me any attention in any of these arguments.
I've been saying this from the beginning.
Wait. But Daniel, what you just said, I answered all of your questions in my opening statement last week, or last time we did this, and I did it again today.
I've been saying we agree the whole time. The only difference is changing what you see in your mind when you see athlete with regard to football. That's the only point of contention I see.
But what I'm saying doesn't even require that, because I've not argued that. You all keep saying, and just like someone in the chat said, did it again, did the same thing you all accused me of in previous discussions. This is not me doing Black American exceptionalism.
I never accused you. You said it yourself.
No, wait a minute.
In a joking manner.
If we go back, but if we go, I acknowledged a bias. I admit a bias, but I
have the same bias.
But that's why I took the time last time we met to organize my thoughts a little bit better and lay out the social construct of my art that I'm basing my argument on. That's why I even engaged in this whole genetic fallacy about the black exceptional athlete being genetically developed over hundreds of years of enslavement, which genetically speaking is an impossibility. So I'm not saying that. I've said everything is about a social construct. So, and I've also been clear in saying, I'm not saying the reason I was jokingly referencing LeBron or Steph Curry is not to say that they would literally be the one. And I kept making this point. I'm not saying they would literally be the ones. I'm saying the pool of athletes from which they come that dissipates and goes into other careers or no careers or whatever would be producing those players, and the mentality,
there is something,
the culture to view the players appropriately. They would, in the same way scouts are developed now to find the next LeBron, they would be developed to find the next
I'm not
Messi.
saying you. I'm not saying Dr. Jared Ball said this. I'm saying this is the general American sentiment, which is why, which is why, if you remember the last episode, I brought that TikTok of that white dude who brought like Dennis Rodman and LeBron James and Michael Jordan at striker.
Right.
I'm not saying you're saying that in particular. I'm saying this is the general
how you
American
all address
sentiment.
my argument, though.
No,
that's what I'm saying.
But Jared, let's actually.
I understand your argument.
Let's
I
add
think.
on. But Jared, no, Jared, let's add on to what you're saying there. Let's add on to what you're saying there, because I do. This is where you are getting. I'm aligned with what you're saying here, and now you're saying, finish your thought because Daniel interrupted.
No, I go ahead.
The pool of players. No. I just want you were saying just the pool of players would be expanded to such that degree,
and the culture would change. And to Robert's point, the financial incentives would be there. Everything would change, and then that pool of players that would also include all of these Latin Americans and whoever else. And if the social structure involving white supremacy, blah blah blah, and the colonial relations inherent in all of this were to ever change or be changed, even white folks would pop up in there with more regularity, because again, I don't think that they are genetically inferior and incapable of producing a talented athlete of any sport. But so so what I am saying though is that currently this country, and I do think it is by design in part from what Robert is saying and others, when it comes to world football, especially, they are saying we're not interested in upsetting the natural resources that we've colonized for these other sports.
Yeah.
And we don't, so that's it. But you keep seeming to say that there is this athletic, and then Daniel said to say that, and I wrote it down, this profiles of athletes for which sport is answered by the pools I'm talking about and Robert is talking about, and how they're encouraged or discouraged.
Jared, this is funny because I find so much agreement in what you're saying that I almost question, like, well, what are we actually disagreeing about? But again, it still comes back to, for me, this idea that people have about what's going to constitute success for this country in terms of this sport. Because everything that you're saying, I agree with, but I'll add this. When that happens, you'd still, with this country, and I think we have to place what I'm about to say here in the context of soccer is still relatively new here compared to other nations. Right. So when you consider, I mean, look at the EPL and how you have teams that were founded in the early 1900s. Right. England as a nation has been playing the game for right. Their men's team has won one tournament, and that was dubious. Right. That was dubious. So why do I say that? I say that because, again, like I said, when people start talking about football in this country and how this nation's supposed to be, maybe my thing that I haven't explained well enough, or I haven't been clear enough, is, like I said, and I tried to say this before, I don't particularly give a damn if the U.S. win a World Cup, right? I really don't. At the same time, because of my role in it,
I do, but like in the wrong way. Like I don't want.
I understand. You know. But what I'm saying is, because of my career and because I'm closer to it maybe than some people in terms of players and whatever. I look at it from the footballing lens, and I understand like where we're at, right? Where the sport is at, given, and again, this is where I Robert needs to hear this from me, given all of the things that he's written down that I agree with. What I disagree with that people make though, and this is now leads to me what you just said, Jared, about all those things happening. You would still get a place with the way that people talk about football here. When everything is open and you have a high concentration of people playing this sport, you would still have to untangle what many Americans think of as peak athleticism from what constitutes success in this sport. And that's my point. So that's why in the last show, you remember we talk about, I gave the hypothetical of you're starting a club in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right? All black club. You'd run into a situation where, I'm just going to say at U12, for example, you'd have a couple athletes in front of you, a couple players in front of you, a couple profiles in front of you. One would be maybe a shorter player, right? Because at U12, kids are all over the place. One's a shorter player who's exceptional on the ball, great vision and all that. You'd have another player who less skilled on the ball, whatever, but has incredible physical capabilities, right? For their age. And you'd have a choice to make. Now, this is what's fascinating to me is a lot of people in this country, given those two choices, and this plays out now. This is not a hypothetical. I face this on a daily, or not on a daily, but I see coaches who struggle with this, right? I'm relatively clear on it. I think a lot of coaches are. But you have a lot of people in there when they start watching football or they make an assessment about the men's national team or the women's national team, they look at those two players and they say, nope, we need that one. The bigger one, the faster one, the more physically developed one. And they think that that's what ails soccer in this country because those players aren't there. They think.
So that's where I disagree, because I think I think you don't give enough credit to folks who coach in other sports, because they're doing the same thing. They're just geared to those other sports. So they'll know. For instance, so give me, let me just for example, they'll note in another context, for instance, basketball or baseball or American football, they'll note at the young age, the kid who is maybe super fast and strong, but has no hands and says he wants to be a receiver, or has no bat speed to match his apparent size and strength, or has no hand-eye coordination to match. They'll note that, and then they'll see someone else who is physically gifted differently, or presents in a different way, but also demonstrates the skills and the profile that they are accustomed to developing. So what I'm saying is, if all of that were to change in this country, geared towards world football, those athletes at a younger age would be cultivated and pulled out of these pools that are being currently excluded at this point, and this country would evolve a better talent pool than it currently has for the sport of world football.
But you said you disagree with me, and you sound like you said exactly what I said, and you said that if it would change, and that's my point to you, is that's the mentality that people have.
Yeah,
the attitude that people. So the attitude that people have is, I want bigger, stronger, faster.
Because they're looking for sports where that's beneficial. They're not thinking about developing a soccer player. They're thinking about.
Okay. But Jared, thank you. Thank you for it. This is it. And this has taken us 3 shows to get to this point. This was drowned out. And whether it was me not explaining it, or you not being open to it, or whatever, or us getting sidetracked, this is the point. I agree with you, Jared. That's the point. But so when many people are talking, and I'll admit, when I heard you speaking and when I heard Robert saying some of the things that he said, it spoke to, you didn't speak to that, or that didn't, this point of agreement didn't come up, because 100%, Jared, I agree with you. If there's a 5'2" kid who's incredible on the ball, great vision, going up against an almost 6 foot kid who lacks a lot of that, I would hope that serious football practitioners and parents and all that watching that would go, no, we got to go with the kid who understands football better. But what I'm saying to you is that. But
look,
let me finish. Let me land, because people are confused about this. And this is when you extrapolate that to the senior level, when people are talking about the best athletes, this is what they're doing. They're doing exactly what you're saying, Jared, in terms of like, they're taking things that apply to other sports, or Daniel made this point too. They're trying to copy and paste norms from other sports and apply.
But that's what I was. But this
And
is
it
what you were not.
doesn't work.
But you all were
It
not
doesn't
hearing
work.
me, because I told you when Daniel played that TikTok not to use that stupid TikTok to assess my argument, and you all kept doing that. And that's what I. And look. So that's why Jeromeo is making the same mistake. All sports are technical. There is no sport that's not technical. There is no sport that doesn't involve specific techniques that are required, that go beyond what we would maybe oversimplify to Mutanda's point as athletic capability. So that's where I was also not agreeing with what I heard, maybe misunderstanding you and Daniel saying, that somehow world football is somehow technical in a way that no other sport is. And I do not agree. We hear that all the time. In basketball, there is always a discussion of the person who has a great jump shot but doesn't have the footwork to get it whenever he or she wants. Or someone who has great footwork, but it got no shot. I mean, we're constantly seeing that. There's always some sort of thing that you have to go beyond a 40 time in a bench press at the end of the day. With me, I'll say this, when I was looking good on paper for an American football career, what became clear to me, that I wasn't maybe willing to admit it and was happy to be injured on the sideline and not having to have it tested, is when I stood on the sideline during a real pro NFL training session practice, and where they're going full speed, and I had to say to myself, I'm not built for this. I'm not ready for this. On paper, I was as fast as them, as strong as them, smart as them. But when I saw the way that they were, I mean, it's just different on the field than it is even in the stands. And I saw those collisions, and I was like, nah. Something inside was like, nah. So you never know this. So that's really my only point. Is it's always beyond the paper. It's always beyond the. Yeah. So I was dumb enough. I was on the sideline for a minute. Thinking I was going to have a football career.
The added piece here, though, is that I don't know if this is the result of us talking past each other, probably, but and what you heard in previous shows, clearly we heard you all making a certain argument, and then you heard us making, or me making, whatever argument. But I do want to say all sports are unique, yes. All sports require something different, yes. In addition, there are culturally in this country, so regardless of where you go, when you work with kids, there are certain aspects of football that are not fully respected by people who say they want their kids to be really good here, right? So, for example, and one of those things, I'll just be very clear with it. I do believe football, in terms of a skill set, we don't value the ball well enough or as much in this country. And it's a big problem. It's a big problem. So and I say that just to say, not to open up a big can of worms or anything, but in addition to everything that everybody's saying about what needs to happen to change, the cultural shift from like understanding, recognizing how this sport is played by the top nations would require a shift from a lot of people in terms of how they develop players. Because the American player, by and large, and this actually, I'll reference something Robert put in the chat, right? The clips you put in the chat, Robert, about the talents emerging in Brazil is interesting to me, that all of them were playing futsal. That's important. That's key. That's important because it directly relates to the fact that the technical aspect of American players and the technique and tactics, because they go hand in hand, is to a large degree not as developed as in other places. And then I'll add to that, American players, by and large, process the game slower than in other places. And so even when the pipeline is open and you got kids from every hood in the country playing this sport, to be a dominant force in world football, the kids here have to learn how to process the game faster because they process it too slow. And this is the major difference, for example, between here and kids in Spain who, you look at the Spanish Federation right now, they hold seemingly every title possible. Like, it's actually ridiculous what's happening there. So that's kind of my major point there.
So before we end, we have a number of comments and questions that I think that I've been highlighting that I think we should deal with if we can. And then it was brought up in passing, but I also have the answer for why England only has one World Cup. I can answer that. So whenever you all are ready for that reveal, just let me know and I'll break it down for you. But
ready now.
Rob,
ready
well,
now.
I don't want to, I just want to leave that, out there for a second and give anybody a chance to respond to what Mutanda just said or add on. I don't want to.
Well, just adding on to Mutanda's analysis, which is something I've spoken to directly, I think, before, is that you just mentioned Spain. I mean, Spain is one of the global leaders in futsal. They have, as a matter of fact, I think they might be the world champion in futsal right now. So I think that the bottom line for the United States is that one, we lack a football culture. So the model of what proper football talent is really not known by a lot of people in the United States. That's one. I think that's in agreement with what Mutanda's saying. And two, I think that one of the keys, not the only key, but one of the keys for the future of the sport in the United States is the degree you can penetrate and spread futsal in the United States. So if kids are being brought up from a young age, knee-high to a duck, and they're playing futsal, eventually that will change the nature of the game. So
I still think on the other end, what you've talked about has to be there too. Parents, kids, it doesn't matter, but parents have to believe that their kids have a professional pathway out for that part of that culture to change, for that cultural shift and the emphasis at a young age to play in those sports. I think, especially if we're talking about those who are not already in the pay to play pipeline and circuit. But yeah, so that's good. So basically we've been arguing for nothing, just for ratings. So great.
I told y'all in the chat album is done. Because it was done.
I'm done too, but I think that the context that, I mean, this kind of leads us to the threshold of another discussion, but everything we've been talking about is related to the men. And there has been no discussion.
Not what I'm talking about. Right now what I'm talking about, but I hear you. Go on. Continue.
Okay. What I'd like to get on the table at some point, if not today, some other session, is how do we explain the U.S. women's national team? Now, from a global perspective, how is it that, technically speaking, without a league, I mean, NWSL is the third incarnation of professional women's football in the United States. But technically speaking, those leagues that they've had, including this one, are not an explanation for why the U.S. women's national team has won, I think it's 3 gold medals.
No,
in the Olympics,
it's not that complicated.
And 4 World Cups.
It's because everybody hates women. Because everybody hates women.
No,
so in this country,
well, why did they win?
In this country,
because they're hated.
Yes, in this country,
what does that mean?
In this country, the hatred of women allowed for women to be given a relative equal shot at playing a sport this country doesn't care about. And they got resourced at a level that already put them head and shoulders above other countries in the world whose hatred of their women meant that they would completely ignore them and use whatever minuscule resources they had to develop their men. So for a time, American women had a head start. Now that the rest of the world has seen the hustle and is catching up, or maybe they're being enlightened, we could think of it in a positive spin. they're starting to resource their women, and the U.S. women are starting to lose. And all of a sudden, all the question is, what happened? What's happening? And that's it. The rest of the world is catching up. And that, by the way, is what's happening to American men in basketball.
So, Jared, what's funny is you start this.
Shout out to South Sudan.
It started off like you were joking, but it's not a joke.
No, I'm not joking.
No,
I'm
I
actually
know you're
serious.
not. I know you're not. But for people who, I'll say, and this, not to bring up old stuff, but this dovetails with what I'm saying by no, for real, because the U.S. this gives us a snapshot.
They're going to bring up old stuff.
Because the athleticism, from what I was arguing, and I know that you agree with this, Daniel, but from what I thought I was arguing against, this question of athleticism it's not that it's a non-issue, but you can see in the women's game that football functions differently. Spain is the best. How many of the Spanish women would be how many of them would be WNBA players? How many of them would be, track athletes, whatever? You see what I'm saying? So it's not and I know we're past that, but my point
Caitlin Clark shows you that.
I mean, yeah. The best women.
She's cold. Stop. I'm not here for Caitlin Clark slander, bro. She's cold. She's cold. Like, is she the coldest?
I wasn't slandering. I was saying she's showing you what it is.
But the game is crazy.
Do you guys know who Aitana Bonmati is? I don't know if I got her first name. I don't. Bonmati? Do you know who Bonmati is?
She plays for Barcelona. She's the Ballon d'Or.
Ballon d'Or winner. Anybody know how big she is?
5 foot
5'5" or something like that.
She's 5'3". She weighs 112 pounds.
Her parents were one of the socialist people in Barcelona back in the day.
When you watch her,
champions.
So when you watch her,
her father was in one of the paramilitary groups allegedly.
Yeah, her lineage is fascinating. But my point is, when you watch her, it's you're watching a genius at work. And if people aren't able to understand that she can be a genius, and it doesn't take, someone who's the size of Caitlin Clark to play, then they're missing something. So no, that's how you explain the women. It isn't complicated. And they're still good. They don't suck now, and they haven't started losing. I think they're in the they're doing well this Olympics. It'll be interesting how far they go. I personally hope they play.
No, I didn't say they sucked. But they're not dominating anymore. They're not.
They're dominating most, but they're not.
Okay.
Spain. No, they are dominating most.
All right.
They are.
Okay.
They are. They're good. They're good. But I can't wait to see them. Hopefully, this tournament we'll see them play Spain. That would be awesome. That's what I want to see. But yeah, we'll see.
All right, so let me, because I do need to start pointing towards a wrap in a little bit here, and then now that we're back on track, we can plan our next gathering around the actual sport itself, the games being played on the field a little bit, or whatever else you all want to bring up. We still got to get back to this research and finding our women's reporting specialist. But okay. Danditso said England has only one World Cup because of the hand of God. That is hilarious, but not correct. The reason, and this is the real reason, England only has one World Cup, because they put. Okay, go ahead.
No. Go for. I'll just guess in my head.
Well, my argument is that they have, again, similar to what I was saying about what was happening with women here. They put restrictions on their colonization. So England being such a global colonizer, but having restrictions and limitations on how many quote unquote foreigners can play in their clubs and their teams, and having, I think, an unspoken rule about their national team. They're cutting themselves off from the expanded pool that other nations are. Germany's and Spain are my outliers for this argument, but that's where I'm going with it. That's what I think it is. They haven't tapped into their colonization. They put their desire for British exclusivity has cut themselves off in a way. That's why I think. And the hand of God. No, yeah, I'm wrong. Okay.
No. I agree with that one, but I'm saying that
I gave it a shot.
I'm saying that wasn't my guess. That wasn't what I thought you were gonna say.
Yeah.
Well,
that's it.
So,
go ahead.
It's
Tell
really-
me why. Yeah, go
It's
ahead.
really, it's really.
I thought you were going to
interesting
say
that you
in 1966, African nations boycotted the 1966 World Cup because
Oh,
of
that's why they only
apartheid.
got the one they did get.
Exactly. In
Oh, that would have been a better
1966.
argument. Yeah, I like your argument better. Daniel's
Ye-
right.
Yeah,
I'm going with
not
that
sure,
one.
I'm not sure about that one with Daniel, but I think that
Wait, Daniel,
the
say that again. Sorry. Say that again.
Because African nations only got one spot, or actually, I think this is when there were 16 teams in the World Cup. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it was a smaller.
And Africa and Asia had to play a playoff in order to pick who got the one spot to go to the World Cup. So in 1966, after the independence movements happened in a lot of African countries, they all came together. I think Nkrumah might have been the spearhead, and was like, "Nah, like we're not. If you don't give us more spaces, then we're not going to show up." And so
No,
they just
I know
didn't
that.
show
I
up.
know, Jeromeo. Their team is blacker than ever now, but now it's too late. So is France. Germany's team is blacker than ever.
Yeah.
It's too late.
I think England's first. Well, it depends on your definition of African, but their first, the one that they claim is Viv Anderson. I think 1978 was their first black player.
After all of that colonizing, they only 1978.
I think it might have been earlier, but
look how
78,
black
somewhere around
Canada's team is. They didn't colonize like England.
They're the settler colony.
They got
though.
Canadian citizens. I know. I'm just playing.
So
I'm only this one. I'm more playing. I think I'm more right than wrong with the women's argument, but this one I might have been reaching on that one. Go ahead, Mutanda. What is it then? What is it?
What is what? Sorry.
Why do you? Oh, I thought you wanted to chime in on why England only has the one.
Oh,
I like Daniel's argument better than
yeah.
mine.
I hear everything.
It's not an argument.
I don't give
thought.
No, it's just it was a bad omen that they didn't allow it. So then it was ever since then they've been judoed out.
Actually, I'll tell you why England has one, and I love that they have one, and I'm annoyed that they have the one that they have because I think it's.
I have an actual reason.
I don't think what I'm about to say. I think Robert will resonate with this, living in the football mad nation that he does. And people realize this. I think everybody here on this panel has traveled enough to know what I'm about to say. Just because you live in a place that's mad about football and has a deep culture that goes back a long time, you have football heritage, doesn't mean that everybody in that place knows what the hell they're talking about with regards to this sport. There are countless people throughout my travels in Europe numerous times or whatever and all that. There are countless people you meet who know F all about this game. And what saves them is their accent, and then they're tied to some club and they think that gives them license to speak on it, even if they themselves are not practitioners. So England, I love making fun of England, and it's not really even in jest because it's true. So none of this is subjective. England's best talents with regards to the game, whether it's on the field or in the coach's dugout, are for the most part foreign imports. Right? When people talk about the best English coaches or the top coaches or the most legendary coaches, they're not talking about English people. And they'll bring up Sir Alex Ferguson. He's Scottish. Right?
That's where they dipped into their colonization.
Yeah. But seriously, if you ask if you ask any casual person who follows the English Premier League, list the top 5 managers ever, at least.
And speaking of Scotland, Dan Dietzo said Scotland had its first black player before England. Is that right? That sounds that's fascinating.
Is the name Watson?
Wow.
Somebody look it up. If it's Watson, I want 5 points.
So the English are a fascinating case study in some of the things that ail the United States as well. That's what I mean by a football culture and extricating ourselves from this mentality. And I think Daniel made this point too before. A lot of coaches and people here who are practitioners in the sport, their influence is from people from the UK, unfortunately. And increasingly what's happening is, and this is the globalization of the game, right? But when you have, like, I was just actually at the big sporting complex here last week. I ran a camp in my role with the state. and next door was Real Madrid running a camp, right? So what's happening is a lot of other clubs and from other countries are starting to do things, but what you find is the English are getting by because they quote unquote invented the sport, right? This is their whole big thing. They have a top league that's the top league because of TV rights and because they've crafted that, they've monopolized that. But again, in terms of the quality of the football, I'm not going to say the players because they do have some good players, but even that, they shit on some of, excuse my language, but they crap on some of the best players that they've ever had because they have this English mentality that doesn't jive with modern day football. And this is why they have a manager like Southgate who has the most talented group of, one of the most, certainly, most talented group of players that England has had. And you can look at the performances. Yes, they got into a final, but they were awful. They should have been out earlier in the Euros, and it would not have been unjust. So I always laugh at England because, yes, you love the sport, you have top players, but that doesn't give you a right to win anything. So I hope they never win anything.
Los gringos no nacen con la bola en los pies, nacen con la bola en la mano. It's facts, right? So that speaks to the culture and to some of what I actually thought was a compelling argument that you, Daniel, and Mutanda were making about the sport, that culturally kids in this country are born with the ball in their hands and not at their feet. And as is not the case elsewhere, but football requires your actual use of feet, unlike most other things we do. So I think that's a legit point. Thank you for making it. And yes, sensible bruh. I think the whole point I think you were meant to say, Jared, is trying to make is that there are plenty of poor black kids in America who are normal sized and tremendous athletes that would never be exposed to the sport. And that is what I'm saying.
Can I make one quick point? Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's data around this point because it's actually just tied to what you just said, Jared. And I want to clarify.
All right.
When Daniel and I are talking about the kids, the importance of the ball in football, we can't overstate the ramifications of this in terms of, so that task constraint of having to manipulate the ball, that's one thing. But I'll be very honest with you. A lot of people watching this sport, even if they're involved in it, so I've met a lot of coaches who fall in this category, don't really fully appreciate how fast football is as a sport, as an exercise. They don't appreciate it for this reason. They see players running around with the ball and the ball's on the floor. But even if you just cross-reference, so what I actually prepared today was this whole thing of and I did my own research because I was like, I need to nail this down because I also work with coaches. I teach other coaches. A lot of people don't realize. Does anybody know the amount of time that a quarterback in the NFL has to throw the ball?
Typically 3 seconds-ish?
Yeah, or less. Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
it's about 2.5, and I'm being generous. I'm lowballing it, and I think Mina Kimes, who's fantastic analyst, whatever, she put it at, I think in the average time to throw for an NFL QB this last season, 2.78 seconds. Okay, but let's just go with 2.5. That's fine. Let's go with 2.5. So that means, to clarify for people in the chat, the ball snapped, quarterback has the ball. Now they're dropping back 2.5 seconds before the ball comes out. Now, does anybody know how much time on average the ball is on a footballer's foot? Is that they're making contact with it when they get it before they have to release it?
Must be like 0.5. Like, is it a second? It can't be.
It's about 1.5 seconds on average. And again, this is position dependent. This study, so there's a study and I've had this for a long time.
And what would the point be in this comparison? What would the point be? What are we supposed to take away from this?
How fast you have to make decisions in football, and how I have 1 point. If I'm a center midfielder, this is a football discussion, so it's not. I'm pointing out this, and this is my point about what people don't get and why Spain dominates right now, because they understand this idea. If I'm a center midfielder, I have pressure coming 360. before the ball gets to me. I said before because this is important, and this is what I mean by American kids process the game too slow. It's not about their athleticism. It's about what I'm about to say right now. If I'm the type of kid, regardless of my physical makeup, if I get the ball and that's when I process what to do with it next, it's too slow. There's not enough time. I'm going to lose the ball. Doesn't matter how big, strong, fast I am. I'm going to lose the ball, or I might just get lucky. If I'm processing something before, once that ball arrives to me, I know what I want to do. And now this is what I mean about that. When you heard Daniel and I talking about the unique nature of the sport, this is what we're talking about. Is this is a sport that affords for a different profiles to play, because in that execution, it doesn't matter so much if you're tall or if you're shorter. If you're able to process at that speed, you can.
First of all, let me tell you why that's a horrible, even if you were right, I'm going to tell you why that method is a terrible method. That comparison is a horrible comparison. Off the top, comparing the games in this way doesn't make any sense. A quarterback has to wait 2-point average seconds because 10 other players have to do exactly the right thing for that play to go correctly, and someone has to run 5, 10, 20 yards. You got to wait. And then you do have to think with anticipation. I mean, I think this is, if I were, wait, just hold on a second. Because think again, you gave this scenario.
Don't do something I'm not doing. Go ahead.
I haven't made my point yet, and I'm definitely not doing whatever. Just listen to what I'm saying. You started off by giving the scenario of a center midfielder and all that player has to consider. A professional, first of all, a center midfielder is never going to have the same amount of players rushing at that player at the same time as a quarterback who drops back to pass. So you're never going to have a situation where a center mid is having 5 to 7 players collapsing on that player at the same time. Defenses don't operate like that. Daniel, come on now, get you. Okay. All right. Number 2. That's true though. You're not going to do that.
No. But hold on, Jared. You're
hold on. Let me finish.
You're acting like there isn't an offensive line. Like there are 5 people trying to get to the quarterback, but how often do 5 people attack the quarterback simultaneously? It's
the attempt. You still yes, there is a line, but the quarterback still has to be aware that this many people are coming, and the quarterback has to assess properly which linemen are attacking.
But so that all happens pre-snap. That happens pre-snap.
Not necessarily, because they will, again, defenses disguise themselves, and you can make a wrong pre-snap read, and if you do not adjust to it, you are sacked. Or to my other point,
by one guy,
or more.
Sorry.
Or more. You're totally now. Hold on. Because wait. What Daniel is now doing is suggesting to me
I'm nitpicking. Go ahead, bro.
It also suggests that you don't have an appropriate appreciation for the game you're criticizing. So that's all I'm saying. Now let me fit now because this is. I'm just saying. Listen to the other. Now let me finish.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback also has to, in addition to making those reads, also has to make predetermined actions. In other words, they have to know where the right ball, again, to Daniel's point about pre-snap, they should know or have to develop the skill of knowing where the most likely the windows of opportunity are going to open up for passing lanes. They have to anticipate. They also will have to throw the ball into a window that a receiver hasn't even turned to see yet. So the receiver has to adjust to a ball that has been thrown that the receiver has not seen leave the quarterback's hand, which is a really, for those who don't know the game, a really underappreciated facet of playing wide receiver or tight end or even running back. So my point is, when you make the comparison, again, you may still be right, but when you make the comparison based on pre-assessments and specifically the time it takes to get rid of the ball, you're totally you're totally missing the point. And if a quarterback throws the ball in 1.5 seconds, it's more than likely the receiver's nowhere near where the receiver needs to be to catch it.
But Jared, with all respect, you are doing something that I'm not doing, and you're highlighting. No, and I'm going to take. I'm not going to go back. This what you've just done is lay out perfectly a great point that I want to add to. So I'm not even say I'm disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you that what quarterbacks do in the NFL is remarkable. What I'm telling you is I never said it wasn't remarkable. You see what I mean?
You're saying it's slower and therefore makes players in this country less effective as soccer players who need to think faster. You just said that. That was the whole point of the comparison. And I'm saying it's not an effective way of making that point.
Dr. Ball, stop, please. This is why it's taken us 3 shows to come to a level of agreement and have it. You just added something that I didn't say. I didn't make the comparison to put one above the other.
I literally asked you, why did you make the comparison? And you said, because the speed of the game is something people in this country have not picked up on because it's too fast. And I'm saying, to make your point, even if you're right, the way you were doing it is an ineffective way because that comparison is terrible. And I just explained why. No, so I'm not doing anything. I'm not holding us up here. I'm listening carefully and responding exactly to what you're saying.
What if was the point of bringing up the snap to throw in the NFL just to give a kind of a marker of how fast time goes?
Amazing.
Simply that
could be the case. Jared, you took
Mutanda, don't do that. I asked you. I even asked you a clarifying question. You said exactly what I said you said. You said the speed of the game is unappreciated by people in this country who grow up on the slower level of a football, and then you used that comparison.
I did.
Dan, why are you even both doing that?
Oh
my God.
Dr. Ball, you added a level, and maybe this is maybe this is your nature. Like, you added a level of comparison to Mutanda's point that he never did.
He literally said it. He literally said, you literally said soccer operates at a speed that kids in this country aren't picking up. And then you
but stop.
Comparison of a football quarterback to prove your point. What are you talking about? My God.
All right, let me explain this.
Try again.
And then I said, even if you're right, you need a better method. All I was doing was exposing the method of that argument as being
I understand.
flawed.
Good
Lord.
I mean, you're all right. Let me explain it this way.
And Jeff, don't tell me to calm down. Calm up. Take everything more seriously. Y'all don't take enough stuff seriously. You play around too much. Don't come around here playing.
The point I'm making. So again, I'm not even going to go back and deal with the numerous, to Daniel's point, like things you added on. What I'm saying to you is, yes, what quarterbacks do is remarkable. A lot of people in this country understand that culturally because they watch it, or if they watch the NFL and they're exposed to that, they get that. And there's some I'm sure who don't, but you can watch that and you can see that. Now, my point about football is when people are watching it, they don't appreciate often how fast it is because if they're not watching with the critical lens, they don't understand just how fast decisions are being made. And I make that comparison to point out one individual player in that sport operating at a super high level. Everything that you said, I co-sign. And I understand. No, you qualify. You tried to add on things that I said, but I never qualified.
Please name one. Name one, Mutanda. Name one thing I added on that you didn't say.
All I said was there's 2.5 seconds for an NFL quarterback to throw the ball. I didn't add in any other things about how many people are coming to get them and this and that and the others. So
no, I use that. No. I use the point to explain why it takes longer. You were using the point of the longer time to talk about why players in this country are slow at adapting to the game. You literally said that. And all I was saying was you may be right, but your reason for getting there was wrong. And Daniel, you can fix your face all you want, but I'm saying you're saying I'm adding.
But you've made a leap.
Why is it?
But
I did not make a leap. You said it. This is what happened last time. You all say something. I call you out on it. And then you tell me you didn't say it.
But there's nothing to be called out on. It's a matter of fact.
It's not a matter of wait. No. It's not a matter of fact to say that the NFL, that football is slower, and therefore America.
But that wasn't said.
You literally did that. That was exactly his point. I even asked, why are you bringing up the comparison between the time it takes for a player to get rid of the ball in two different sports? And you said because people in this country don't appreciate the speed of soccer. And I was saying that that's a bad way of making the point.
You know why
it is, and it's a terrible way of making the point. The comparison is totally terrible.
If
someone, so hold on. So just quick. So if I said,
so why bring it up then? Why bring it up if now you're saying I misinterpreted what Mutanda actually said out his mouth? Why then bring up the difference in the speed?
If I said that it on average it takes 1.3 seconds, it's if I said it takes 0.2 seconds for an NBA player to shoot their jump shot, and it takes 1.5 seconds for a central midfielder to do their pass, I'm not inherently saying basketball is more difficult than the NFL. I'm not saying basketball players are stupider than
making that comparison, and then you say
I'm only bringing that point up. Hold on.
But I asked Mutanda, wait, you're skipping that step. I asked him why he brought up the comparison, and he said that's why people in this country struggle to keep up with the speed of the game. They don't appreciate the speed of the game because they're used to and attuned to an NFL speed. And I'm saying that's a bad way of making the argument. So, Daniel, if you just bring up the two speed differences and leave it in a vacuum, sure, then it's just what it is. But when I ask you why, Daniel, are you bringing up the differences in speed, and you say because that's a sign of why people in one country are less adaptable or less appreciative of a sport.
I didn't hear that though.
But he said it. But he said it.
Can I make a point of clarification?
That's why I asked.
Sure. Let me see if I can clear
this up. And then he said it.
Let me see if I can clear this up. Okay.
What's the issue?
The reason I've been promoting the idea of futsal is because it addresses the issue of speed in two senses. Mm-hmm. It addresses the quote unquote the physical ability to develop a skill set with the ball that is incredibly fast, and futsal develops the mental speed, which I think is what Mutanda was talking about as well, that there's a mental speed in the game that you see it obviously at the professional level, but that's developed with futsal that makes futsal the foundation for football globally, or at least for the great players that play it. So I think I think futsal would maybe be a better kind of lens to look at this through.
But that makes perfect sense, because if you grow up playing American football or basketball or baseball, you're not going to be playing the game at the speed mentally or any other way of someone who's grown up in the sport. That's why I agree. So all I was saying was to make the point by saying a quarterback has the ball longer. So therefore, that's a ridiculous argument for whoever is making comparison.
Just to clarify with one more point about
you said it though, Mutanda. You said that therefore.
Let me finish what I said. Now you're
why did
hold on. I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to.
You're telling me to calm down. You're screaming my name, but tell me, Mutanda, explain the differences then. Why did you bring it up?
I'm going to answer your question. I brought it up because I maybe mistakenly thought that I could paint a picture that would give people a reference for just how fast the game is. What you have done, and yes, this is exactly what you did last time, is exactly why you didn't hear us and why you didn't even hear the points of agreement, is because the layers of which you've added to this speak to your own defensiveness that you're arguing with yourself. To Daniel's point, and thank you, Daniel, for clarifying, for standing up for this, and not just that you were standing up for me, but in terms of moving us past this, because this annoys me. I bring up something that's, again, a fact. It's not subjective. I use that to paint a picture. You hear that, Jared, and you go to a point of comparison of one.
You made the comparison. You were making the comparison.
But I'm not.
And to bring up a fact that is in fact in a vacuum, it does not mean. That's why I asked you, why are you bringing up the fact? Because I explained why. I explained why a quarterback has the ball longer. That has nothing to do with how fast the game of soccer is or how people understand the speed of the game. It is intrinsic to the game itself.
No. Well,
it is. It's intrinsic to the game itself that a quarterback would hold the ball longer. It has nothing to do with how fast their mind is working or understanding the speed of a game, which is the point you were making. And I'm saying that's a bad way of making the argument. Because it suggests that you were suggesting that an NFL player is thinking slower than a soccer player, which is why Americans don't pick up the game. So you're throwing this on like I'm misleading. He said that.
Did he infer it in your mind?
No. He said the words, that's why in this country players are not picking up the game as fast or something to that effect. You exactly said it. But that's why I asked the clarifying question, Daniel.
But that doesn't relate to football. But that doesn't relate to the NFL.
Which is exactly the point I'm making. When you, again, if you're trying, I don't even know why you're doing this. I really don't know why you're doing this.
You're doing this. Nobody's doing anything.
I'm not doing anything. I'm responding exactly to what you said, and I'm exposing a poorly framed argument that instead of you just saying, you know what, you're right, and reframing it the way Robert did, you want to double down by saying that Jared is doing something.
The only thing Robert did different than I did is he talked about, and I did do this as well. So I'll be very consistent here. He talked about futsal, which is fast, and I agree. So if I could say the same that I said for soccer with futsal, right? Futsal is a fast sport. Now, Jared, you are the one who's getting defensive about something that I'm not doing. So if you need me to clarify,
it's not even me being defensive about what it's me responding to what you said after asking you a following up. So wait a minute. No. Don't, because you keep accusing me of something which is ridiculous. Listen to what you just did. If the goal is to teach Americans to be better and faster in the game of soccer, then yes, have them train in futsal. The goal would then not be to then compare the length of time a football player, an NFL player holds a ball at quarterback to say that that's why the game is faster than what they're used. Again, you were making a point. You just are now trying to walk away from it.
I'm not walking away from anything. You continue, and you've repeatedly interrupted to fight with yourself. If this is what's going to happen, I'm
only interrupting when you misrepresent and accuse me of something.
I'm not.
That's the only time I've interrupted. You've accused me of being defensive and adding things that you have not said when you literally answered a question I asked as a follow-up to clarify. Now you're reframing what you said to come up with something else, which makes, and if you pay attention, when Robert brings up futsal, he's exposing that what you did initially was something else.
No,
because if you were trying to do something else, you would have stayed what he did. Right, I agree with it too.
We can end it here. I'm not.
I even said you were probably right. You were just making a bad argument,
which is a wild.
And then it's not. It's not. It's a bad argument to say to you, and then you wanted to tell me to say I'm being defensive. It's crazy.
It's wild to me how I can point something out that is just a fact. And I'll stand on it. So I'm not running away from you, Jared, here.
It's an irrelevant fact. The speed of a football in a quarterback and the speed of a midfielder in soccer and the time that they have the ball is irrelevant unless you're making the point about what you were initially making. And I'm calling you out on.
I don't think you heard the point that I was initially making. I don't think you get the point. But it's okay.
Go ahead. I won't say another word. Go ahead. No. Go ahead. Let him finish. And I won't say another word till Mutanda's completely finished explaining. Go ahead.
Mutanda? Jared, it's not a question if I'm finished. It's a question of what Jared's going to make up to argue about with himself after I make a simple point. That's the question.
Let me try to wrap it up and take it back to.
But he didn't do it. He didn't do it.
At least thematically.
Let Mutanda do it. I want Mutanda to unwind himself here. Make the point that I'm not getting without interruption. Please.
I'm pointing out that what soccer players do is fast. I am not saying that what football players do is not fast, or specifically the quarterback in this case, right, is not fast. For a population in which the NFL is the most dominant sporting venture, and for the people, we started this by like, oh, how are we going to get kids involved in soccer and all this? And for people who grow up watching a lot of tackle football, if they don't watch soccer, and I mean a lot of these kids, they may not have appreciation for just how fast decisions are being made. So when I bring up this comparison, it's just to highlight as an example of how fast you have to think in soccer. Essentially, everybody on the field has to operate as if they are an NFL quarterback. And that's something that a lot of people don't get, right? So I'm actually doing the opposite of what you're accusing me of doing, of like, oh, you're comparing it to make it seem like the NFL is much slower. No, what I'm saying is NFL quarterbacks have to process the game super fast. Co-sign everything that you're saying. They have to make pre-snap reads. They have to be willing to change their mind. And when the pocket collapses, they have to be willing to shift and then make a different read, etc. Amazing. And they have about 2.5 seconds to do it. Sometimes more and sometimes less. They do it. When it comes to soccer, people are doing that, all the outfield players, and they're doing it with their feet, right? So it's wild what they do. It's very challenging. That's all I was saying. It's not to diss footballers or American footballers or anything. It's just to point out, to use that reference because it's a cultural reference that a lot of people get, right? I think a lot of people can get that. That's it. That's it.
No, Mutanda, that's what I heard in the first place. So you're not going crazy. That's what I heard. Now, maybe Jared heard something else, or maybe I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah,
both of those things might be true, but to me, it sounded like a comparison of speed to give reference to how fast footballers are moving, and then Jared placed a value on NFL, and that took it.
And then tried to make it seem like I'm crazy. Come on, man.
Let me try to I think we're at the end of the quote unquote line here in terms of this discussion. But let me ask you permission to describe to you discussions that take place in Brazil about football. And one of the discussions that oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes takes place, particularly talking about Pelé, is not just his physical attributes, but the mental speed that he brought to the game. It's a fairly flushed out issue here, and one of the classic examples of almost like the simultaneity of his physical body and his mental acumen and speed is the last goal in the 1970 World Cup against Italy, where he received a ball from the left side of the field. I'm not sure whether it was from Tostão. And then Pelé passed the ball with his right foot to an advancing Carlos Alberto to hit the goal to hit the ball into the goal. One of the things that nobody talks about is that when Pelé did that, his eyesight, his eyes were locked on the defender's eyes. And the defender's eye could see Carlos Alberto, who was coming from behind. Pelé could not see him. He probably knew he was there. But Pelé's eyesight caught his eye movement. And in that movement, in that moment of the movement of the guy's eyes, he passed the ball to Carlos Alberto. So it's that kind of simultaneity that I think Mutanda is trying to talk about. And I simply mentioned futsal because that's the sport where that kind of simultaneity of action is refined.
I appreciate you. I don't need anyone to clarify it for me. To the degree that I made a bad argument before, a lot of people heard it and understood it and didn't take it to places that it didn't need to go. My only point, and I think this is important because as a teacher, I know there are other teachers here, right? So you guys will appreciate this. You know that people are going to come into, and again, I use the example that we've all used here, which is how do we grow this game here in this country, right? And how do we grow it to include kids who are obviously not given the access that they need now. So what I'm telling you now comes from experience of teaching it. You get kids who come into the court or come onto the field or the futsal court, because I do futsal as well, and they don't have an appreciation of soccer, but they have an appreciation for other sports. So what do you do as an instructor? You take wherever they're at, you meet them where they're at, and you take whatever context they understand invasion sports, because American football, basketball, and football are all invasion sports. So you take wherever they're at, and then you try to help them with, the requisite skills to play, in this case, football, right? Or futsal. So when I make that comparison, I've made the same comparison before in other circles, and it hasn't gone this terribly because people are typically like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, American football, the quarterback has to be really fast. Oh wow, I didn't understand. I didn't see, and a lot of people are at this place. I didn't understand that in soccer, you actually have to think that fast as well. And guess what? You can tell with the kids that they don't see that because they don't have the requisite behaviors to process that fast. And now, even to bring this full circle, as it relates to the conversation, how it started today in terms of our best athletes, this was my point about when I take kids abroad, and we're playing against kids from Portugal or Spain or France, wherever, the number one thing that really hits home for you or for me and for other coaches watching is how slow our kids process the sport, right? And that's what I'm speaking to, right? Which is that, and it's not because they watch American football and that's somehow slower. It's just that their context, that they're not appreciating the context for how fast the sport is, right? And so when they play, they struggle. So I was simply painting a picture. It wasn't a value judgment, as our esteemed colleague seems to think.
Hey, I'm glad that my correcting the flawed argument you were making has led you to another level of clarity, because this is not how you answered my question when I initially asked, why are you making that comparison? You answered it very differently, which is exposing your biases, which my esteemed colleagues are less adept at accepting or acknowledging than I am at my own. And that's all I was addressing. It's a flawed argument. Okay. That's it. So yes, if kids grow up here playing world football, their minds and thinking capability will move just as fast as any footballer who grows up playing the game, because the mind has to move that fast in every other sport. In baseball, a batter often has to begin the swing before the ball leaves the pitcher's hand to match the speed of the throw, and then make adjustments on the fly. So, I mean, this is, wild connect. Where do I hit the ball? Depending where runners are. What's the batting situation? There's all kinds of things happening. The clip even that you sent for us to review was Shannon Sharp, who I rarely find myself agreeing with or wanting to hear from. And I don't know the full context of the whole discussion they were having, but he was making a good point. American football players have a lot to be thinking about, a lot of plays to memorize, a lot of contingencies that they have to think about and have to adjust to very quickly. In fact, they often say that the biggest jump in this country in sports is from college to pro American football because of the speed of the game. And they don't just mean the physical movement. They're talking about the intellectual speed of the game. So you in the chat may have, biases that prevent you from hearing my argument or from seeing the flaw in your own, but I was exactly right. And yes, if you want to increase the intellectual and otherwise speed of the game of American kids, futsal is a great thing to have them do. It's great.
Any more comments we need to get through?
first of all, I wanted to acknowledge Tafari. Tafari, we got to build, man, because I even been having these sit here for weeks. I want to talk to you about these postcards you create and send. And I want to fully get to get into, but you're saying here, that's what happened when an old teammate friend, I grew up with Bobby Wagner, who now plays in the NFL. Wow. You grew up with Bobby Wagner. Anyway, Tafari creates these postcards that I think are dope. And I want to talk to you about that as well. So that was one I wanted to bring up. And yes, I've read Eduardo Galeano's Soccer in the Sun and Shadow, something like that. I gifted a copy to my youngest as well. It's a great book.
Great book.
And we also did The Open Veins of Latin America. Another book an incredible book that folks should read.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but I think when Hugo Chavez was visited by, he was visited by some U.S. president. I think it was Obama. I'm not sure who it was, but he gave that book to Obama.
He did. That's right. He did. And Obama probably quickly threw it away. No. In fact, Obama didn't do that. Obama read it, interpreted, understood it very well, and then worked actively against it. That's what he did.
Right.
Crew Stoic, Dr. Ball interviewed Thierry, who apparently has been saying in agreement with, I think, Mutanda and Daniel, that, because you said earlier that here it is. Thierry Henry and Mika must have tuned into the show. Last week, they dismissed any idea that America would win everything if only the best Black American athletes were recruited. Hey, they should tune into the show. Maybe they would learn something. They stop hanging out with only Sky Sports and whoever else analysts.
I have a larger comment on Micah Richards, but we won't.
They would. I'd be curious to what context they said that or what. I'm not familiar with.
Rhymes with spoon.
Oh no! Damn! But don't say it yet. I was gonna say, let's get them on. Let's invite them on with Thierry and Mika. Come on, but not anymore.
I never said anything.
Nah, Jared, because the minute they try to, yeah, that's
I don't know, but it is a vibe I get when I watch. But
yeah.
Oh man.
Go ahead, Butana. My bad. Go ahead.
No. I got nothing.
Oh, I thought you were saying something. I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, whoever put me in touch with Thierry Henry, I'll reach out. He might be the next head coach of the U.S. nationals team, right? Didn't they say? Isn't he in the?
I highly doubt that. But no, what I was saying is I don't know.
You know the degrees of Kevin Bacon. I think I'm like 2
6 degrees.
Oh, yeah, I think I'm 2 away from Thierry Henry. I'm not gonna press any buttons, but
oh,
I know somebody who knows somebody who knows it. For sure.
I'm fascinated by I hopefully that whoever put that in the chat. I just don't know I don't know the interview that they're referencing or whatever the discussion was.
Yeah, send a link.
But send a link to that because that could be. I mean, again, but I feel like we'd just be bringing up old stuff, which it seems like there's agreement. But
nah, man, we're good. We're good. And when I get riled up, so this, let me be clear. Like when I get riled up, I'm not like bent out of shape for real.
You're think enjoying it,
is
which
good.
is
I am enjoying it.
Yeah, but it's.
But I mean
Robert,
it. Well, I mean what I'm saying. Hold up, though.
On.
I mean what I'm saying, though, and I am right. But I don't mean. But I don't mean it with all that hostility. Like I don't take it like it doesn't go beyond that.
I'm in the comments now. I'm rarely in the comments, but I'm in the comments now, and there was one that jumped out that I thought was hilarious.
Well, let me just while you find that, let me just get rid of these last two that I had that were making fun of my failed football career. Latif says would have been a hell of a water boy though. Go get some. I would have been a hell of a water boy. Jab didn't have that dog in him. He had them brains. That's a fact, man. I can't front. My ego at the time was not proud because at the time I was young and wanted to be. I thought I was this and that. But I had to admit to myself, man, I didn't admit it outside of my own head, but I had to admit to myself, you're not, I did not have it. Go ahead. Did you find it? Mutanda, did you find it?
Where is it, man? I don't know. This was hilarious.
Do you remember the gist? Maybe I can find it.
Somehow somebody said that I said that soccer, you had to think fast, and then Jared put up a middle finger or something. It was hilarious.
No, you do have to think fast. And again, I love the sport. I just recognize, again, my point about this is always a social construct. So my default is that, it's the same thing I used to say about, and I still say about employment. There was, when I worked at the fast food joint, like you got to have a certain intellectual capability to learn how to work the deep fryer, to learn how to cook fries right, to flip burgers right.
Unskilled job.
That's what I'm saying. And when I was bartending, it got even more serious. Like it's a skill. It's a whole, and then to do tricks and perform and all that kind of stuff, which I never did, but you gotta have there's always some. So I would defend, if we were in a room full of people talking trash about soccer, which is usually where I am, or world football, I'm in there.
Well, no, go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
No.
Go ahead.
No.
That's what it was. I saw the CTE in my future. I was like, I'm damaging enough of my brain cells as it is on my own will.
Yeah.
I'm tired of losing them in man.
The reason I used a quarterback, instead of another position is because the quarterback handles the ball. So I was using. I mean, it's actually not that deep, right? Because people. When people talk about a ball skill sport, and Robert, Robert, I heard you say this at the beginning of the show, and I'm glad you did, because I was going to take you to task for it. You said you don't consider NFL football to be a ball skill sport, and I completely agree with you. I think there's a mythology though that it is, right? And the reason I don't
how is it not? Real quick.
Good question. Because the ball is rarely, if ever, in transit between individual players, and when it is, it's by one person. The quarterback to somebody else. Now, let me say this. It doesn't mean that what people are doing is not skilled. So everything that you pointed out, Jared, like when a wide receiver is running a route, has to put on the brakes, goes for a jump ball, it's amazing. It's very narrow. It's very specific. It's details talking about the manipulation of the ball, right? The manipulation of the ball. When the quarterback in football gets the ball, and then if they hand it off to someone, that's even, I'm not going to use the word easier, but it's more secure. Let's put it that way. It's more secure. If they're throwing it, obviously it's less secure. It could be intercepted, etc. But after that, the quarterback doesn't get the ball back, right? The wide receiver, whose job it is to get open and catch the ball, they catch the ball, and then what do they do?
Flea flicker. Don't say it.
Yeah. Trick plays.
No. But to be fair,
exceptions for the rules. But when
I wasn't. I did think that, but I wasn't going to do that. It did cross my mind.
But then
we're the same.
But I wasn't going to do that because really what I was going to. But again, I'm thinking. One, I would say, again, just for the methodology of the argument, Mutanda, a handoff is very complicated. They have to drill it. That's why when second backup quarterbacks come in, they got the fumbles all the time. It's not that easy. The other thing is with the back and forth of the ball.
I said it was more secure.
I know. I'm just saying it's not as easy as I even think you were making it seem like. But just the other thing is that the reason it's not a back and forth is because they get tackled and the play is over. It's not that they don't have the ability. The game may not require it. But okay, that's why I'm not mad at. I'm not.
No, you shouldn't be mad because I'm only talking objectively.
I don't know that you are. I don't know that I agree with that part because I don't think you're being fully objective here.
I think. So the quarterback gets the ball thrown to somebody. Does that person usually in football? Usually,
but again, listen to the way you're describing that. So I get it. You're saying that of the 22 players on the field at a given point, only a handful of them, and that's why they're called the skill positions, are dealing with the transfer of the ball in any meaningful way. I get that.
Yeah.
But when you describe it, but even when you did the handoff, I think you diminish it a little bit, and then you're saying all the let me just finish, because when you say the quarterback, all he does is throw the ball once and then that's it. But think about what that means. To throw the ball once in that instance requires far more than, for instance, an unpressured transfer of the ball from center back to the midfielder to the front.
You played tackle football, didn't you, Jared?
No, actually I didn't. I never actually did. I never made it onto the field. That was my sort of my point. I got injured, but got out there. Yeah.
I love this is great, and we can stop because what I prepared today was actually it, and it wouldn't have gone well. So I'm glad I didn't do it, but I am being objective because Jared, you add things on to what I say to make a value judgment. What I don't know what I need to say to you to convince you, which is why I don't try. Right. And then half the time you interrupt me before I finish it. But here's if I need to say this, let me just say this.
My man, I'm interrupting you now, but I didn't sit back and I didn't say a word for that. Come on now. Don't do that. Go ahead.
So that you have the proper context. I'm saying this in front of the world, Jared, so we understand one another. So that maybe this doesn't have to happen. Because I know you're not really heated. I think we're good. Like, in fact, at some point here, I'm going to call you just back and forth just personally. But here's the thing. Here's what you need to hear from me. I was 4 years old when I came to this country. Okay, I wasn't born here. I was 4 years old when I came here. I grew up in the 1990s in Seattle, Washington. My heyday. So I grew up in the heyday of the Seattle Sonics. Basketball is like a close second for me in terms of sports that I love. Right. So I grew up on Gary Payton, right? The Glove, the Rain Man, Sean Kemp. I also grew up at a time when Ken Griffey Jr. was maybe one of the big guys in all of U.S. sports, right? Remember when there was the Nike for president, or no, Griffey for president ads, whatever, when Nike came out. Like he was big. So I loved I grew up going to my first sporting event. One of my first sporting events was going to a Mariners game with my dad, and Griffey hit a home run. I say all that to say this. So the Seahawks, all that, I'm well versed in other sports. I played basketball all up until high school. I'm not trying to big myself up here. I'm just trying to get to a place where, Jared, you and I can see that I'm not trying to diss your American football, right? When I say these things, I just bring up objectively things that are true that anybody can research, that watching the game will tell you. And it's not a value judgment. It's not. It's just pointing out, when we have a sport that operates this way, and that the task constraints are this, and everything you've just pointed out, that's amazing. And then when you look at another sport where the task constraints are this, we got to be able to see how, one, they're different, but also two, comparatively, how what, in this case, world football, what athletes do is so remarkable, right? Because it's remarkable in the other context. It's also remarkable in the world football context, with the added thing of, and it's not saying it's easier, but it's different, with the added thing of they're doing it with their feet, which is something that's foreign to pretty much every other sport. That is it. That is it. Everything else that you're doing, even what you just did now, when you say, yeah, but the way you're discussing it makes it seem like it's easy or this. No, that's you. You're hearing that.
It's not me. It's what you're saying. So Matanda, so this is now again, you are saying it.
You take what I say and you hear something that you fight on. But what you hear is coming from your own place of No. It's not. It's
that I don't need for something to be communicated overtly to understand what's being communicated on one hand. On the other hand, I don't accept the attempt to gaslight me into to suggest that I'm not seeing or hearing what it is in fact you're saying. So my point is, so just to give you some context, I never played American football. I was never allowed to play American football. I grew up playing soccer, baseball, basketball. So and even when I played soccer, we did not have what we have today. So I was not even encouraged to enjoy it as a fan. Could not watch games. We would literally have to get VHS tapes of games or highlights to see what was going on in the world. So there was no access to it. So I didn't grow up appreciating the finer points of it until much later. What I think that has done is that as I have become a pro world football person, where it's my preferred sport and where I have come to appreciate the finer elements of blah, 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 I can add that to what I understand goes into playing these other games. And that's all I'm looking to do here in trying to so I'm not, it's not even, if there's a bias, I might admit it. My bias is around Black America. I do admit that. I'm not saying that that's involved in this argument, this part of the argument, but that's where my biases are. And I do check it. I say it. I admit it so I can have it be checked and balanced. So my point is only to say that, yes, when you say American football is not a ball skill sport because only a handful of players have the ball and a quarterback just throws the ball, you are diminishing all that goes into that very high intensely skilled ball skilled endeavor to not only throw a ball but to catch a ball in the context of running routes against defenders, having to not, again, I really don't think people appreciate, because I didn't appreciate it till I had to do it, what it means to catch a ball that you have not seen thrown. Most of us, when we go out and play, we're turning around, we see the person throw the ball, we go and catch it. That's easy. When you've not seen it thrown and have to turn and catch it, and it has to be thrown at an exact spot so that this can happen while you're moving in full stride, blah, 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 running full speed, catching a ball. So when you say he just hands it off, I do think, now, again, I admitted earlier, I do think the compelling argument you make that distinguishes world football is the use of the feet. At the same time,
can I ask you a question that would?
I'll finish here, but at the same time, I only think that difference is not accessible if people are raised up and trained in the culture of da 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 da. That's all I've been saying.
I didn't. But let me ask you this question now. If American football, what do you think is prioritized in American football? The skill of a player on the ball, or actually, that's a bad. My point is, when you detail, so when you say something, any argument that I'm diminishing the sport, I'm just looking at it in a very detailed way. I apologize if it comes across as diminishing it, and and I need to fix that. So I apologize if that comes across.
Because you want to say that soccer is so unique.
I'm saying is this. No, all I'm saying is this. Can we at least agree? This is my question, I guess. Do you agree that a football coach looks at somebody, and then when they consider like what position they're going to put him at, do you think they highlight certain characteristics, or there's certain things that are at the forefront of their mind?
Absolutely.
Okay, such as, what would you say?
Again, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, up until that jump from college to pro NFL football, everything is about I would say is the dominant is the physical capabilities.
Okay.
But often what distinguishes the people who make it as a pro is the ability to become somewhat intellectual with the game and evolve. And I would even say that at upper level college programs.
Okay, but now let's just take
maybe even high school programs for that matter.
But let's just take what you just said there, because intellect is involved in everything. I co-sign that. It's what athletes do. Pro athletes don't get enough credit for being like savants at what they do. 100% agree. But what you just said there is exactly my point. Now, just because I say it differently or use a different example, it's like blows up. Because what you just said there, Jared, is yes, physically, the physical attributes of someone takes prominence when coaches are considering what to put them at in American football. My only point about American football isn't as much of a ball sport skills as some people might think, is exactly that point. Because when any given, you can name the play. Doesn't matter what play. If you tell me that out of 11 aside, right? So out of 11 players that are on a team, I'm including the snapper in this 3, but really it's 2, right? That 2 people are going to touch the ball on any given play, right? I'm not diminishing it. That's objectively true. If that's the case, whoever gets the ball, and this is where the rules come into play. So because the scoring mechanism in football is I got to get across the line, right? My body has to cross the line. Of course, undoubtedly, objectively, what's being prioritized there is our physical attributes. Because when the receiver catches the ball, or when the running back gets the ball, they effectively become, they're a runner at that point. This is my point about they're not transferring the ball to anybody else unless it's a trick play or it's dying seconds in the game, right? And you know all this. That's all I'm saying. So once I get the ball, now it's tucked in. The whole purpose is for it to not move. My purpose is for it to be secure. And now I run, I become a battering ram, and I'm trying to score. When I say football functions differently, it's because exactly in that it doesn't. So everybody on the field operates like a QB. And because the scoring mechanism isn't my body crosses the line, the ball crosses the line, the way that the individual athletes manipulate the ball is unique. It's special. It's different. That's it.
But Mutanda, isn't it also true? I got to ask this question, Robert. I'm sorry, but isn't it also true that if you're 6'2", 6'3", and slower, but have decent ball skills, you're going to probably play center forward? Isn't it also true that you're less likely to be put out on the wing, regardless of your ball skills? If you're not speed, if you don't have speed, wouldn't they be more likely to put you in the middle or somewhere else? So, and again, it's not that I don't appreciate world football's technical skills and the specifics of its needs, but they do the same thing there too. There are elements of the same thing there too. You're not fast enough to play on the wing, so we're going to take your skill set and put it elsewhere. You're too short to play center forward in the way we want you to play center forward, so we're not even going to use one. We're going to have a number 10 now. We're a false nine, whatever the hell they call it. So that's my point. They do the same thing.
But isn't the larger point here that in football, all 22 people are responsible for the manipulation movement of the football, and they all have to be in a professional level. They all have to be technically yes in soccer for purposes of clarity. All 22 people are responsible for manipulating the ball. In American football, that's not the case. I mean, you have like linemen obviously don't need to manipulate the football except for the center, the shotgun snaps under center. The quarterback, the wide receiver, and maybe a free safety or a cornerback if they get an interception, a lineman if they pick up a fumble or something like that, and a running back, obviously. So the aspects that each player on the field must need is completely different than what football is. And I understand what Mutanda's saying. I just think it's probably it's a bad comparison. Basketball is a more close example where everybody has to be responsible for catching the ball, passing the ball, shooting it. I feel like that's more one to one.
I want to take this comparison out of it, because if that's what's the hang up here, then let's stop using that. It's an analysis. If you want, we can just contain it from sport to sport. Yes, to your point, Daniel. Yes, exactly. And again, forgive me, because clearly my explanations suck, so I apologize. But like 100%, all 22 people on the field in world football are responsible for the manipulation of the ball. That is not the case for other sports, and so it gives it a different. Well, really, the point is it allows for different. That requirement alone means that different profiles are valued, right?
But it doesn't distinguish it from basketball.
No, basketball has, but the barrier in basketball is now the hoop. The difference in basketball, the major difference is the hoop is 10 feet, so is a height requirement now, right? So yeah, no, and exactly, no, it's beautiful. You're right, because this is my only thing is we can have these discussions without thinking people are being nefarious and trying to diminish other sports, because I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm using it to say, yes, and what footballers do and the whole point is around how do we get better in this country, or taking it to different populations. When people come into this sport, they sometimes don't get this. Everybody on this panel seemingly understands this. Beautiful, great. A lot of people don't.
What about lacrosse? Ain't nobody thinking about lacrosse.
Lacrosse doesn't work either, because
hockey. Don't nobody care about hockey either. Everybody got to touch the puck in hockey too.
Hockey works in a similar way to football.
But nobody care about these sports.
Doesn't actually work because the ball is being carried within the stick. So once it's caught, it's in the stick, and you're using your legs to move. But in football, you have to run with the object that you're running with.
Because somebody's going to soon say golf requires ball skills and is therefore a sport.
Golf is not a sport. Golf is not a sport.
Okay, thank you. All right, good. I was just checking. Golf is
not a sport. Bowling's not a sport. I have a particular definition of sport. A sport is an activity where my direct actions influence the actions of another, which means golf cannot work because it's you against the course.
That's true. But a golfer might try to say, but if I know I got to catch someone else's game, then I got to take a chance.
But they're not defending you.
I know, you're right. You're right. No, you're right. I'm just trying to say.
Chess is actually more of a sport than golf.
It's not a sport, but it's not. It's not a sport. Chess is not a sport. We got to be clear on that.
I don't know.
It's not a sport. It's a game.
I said more of, not a.
But if the only thing that causes you to sweat is nerves, it's not a sport.
Like darts, so chess, English people,
chess
cut the shit with darts, okay? That's not a fucking sport. And no matter how many people scream 180, stop it.
If you can routinely gather with pitchers of beer to play it, it's not a sport. Stop. So that would take bowling out for me as well, just without your expert level. Is the long jump a sport?
No,
it's an athletic skill,
an athletic feat. Like see, you see the only thing that trips me up with my definition is long distance running.
What about sprints?
That's just a pure test of how fast you are. And
long distance is just how long can you?
No. But see, there's a tactical aspect to long distance running where my direct actions do influence when you kick. If you're trying to beat me, in sprinting, it's just who's faster. But like a mile, 5,000, 10,000. My definition is on the rocks there. I don't know. I'm working on it. I've been working on this for like 15 years. Okay, give me grace.
Me too, actually. So yeah, I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Robert was going to say something.
No, just to kind of hopefully clarify.
400, 800 count as well, but 200 and 100 is pure sprinting. Sorry, Robert.
Since I'm the person that said that American football wasn't a ball skill sport, I should clarify what I mean. And as you know, I played both in high school and college. So the physics of the ball in American football is obviously an adaptation of a rugby ball. And it's an adaptation that was created at the turn of the century to be able to facilitate the idea of a forward pass. So that's why the football has been, over the years, evolved to the point where somebody could throw it.
Don't highlight that.
My bad. Stop it, Daniel. Robert's making a serious point. Don't.
I know. I'm with him.
So that's one thing. I think that the physics between a basketball and a soccer ball or a football is the better analogy, just because the physics is, regarding the trajectory and use of a round ball. So I think those two sports have a lot more comparability in terms of discussion than American football.
Yeah, and even there, I hear that, and even there, that's when you talk about the particulars of it and how the profiles differ from one to the other.
Yeah.
The analysis in basketball that I think is important to, at least for me, when I'm doing this cross-sport research, my key thing is about the time in possession. And the reason I bring that up is because that directly relates to, and again, not that one is better, because I understand to Jared's point, there are reasons why an NFL quarterback would hold on to the ball a certain amount of time. I get that. But this is the point, is exactly the point of, like, when you're playing these sports and you're conditioned to move a certain way, for athletes to find success in that particular exercise, they have to be conditioned that way. A lot of the kids playing soccer in this country, when it comes to being good at it, are not conditioned to process football as fast as they need to relative to what other kids are doing in other countries, right? So yeah, that's it. Because what distinguishes in all three sports, if we're talking about the NFL, we're talking basketball, we're talking about soccer, what distinguishes the best players in all those sports is 100% their vision, their processing speed, and then their ability to execute and change their mind real quick.
So this was we're done.
Okay.
But there is tech involved in sprinting. That's all. I do agree with that. But
I'm not saying
I also
there's not
agree
a
with your point. And I know I was
technicality
going
to
to say that too. But it doesn't make it someone else.
I just don't think it doesn't conform to sport because there's nobody stopping you. Even in hurdles, there's nobody out there to defend your speed, to defend your tactics. Even we can go steeplechase. They put water, they put that, but it's not an actual person determining when you jump, when you go left, when you go right. There has to be human interaction, which is why tennis, boxing is the ultimate example. I punch, you got to dodge it, or you get knocked out. Like that's what a sport is. Everything else is a game,
and it's also an intellectual science. So. All right, good people. Listen, fellas, I thoroughly appreciate this. I'm still waiting for the time we're all going to gather in Robert's living room in Brazil. And I look forward to our future discussions. Let's get immediately scheduling that in the chat. I didn't see one suggested name for the show, by the way. Not one.
Do people want this as a show?
Well, I don't want to be disrespectful. I want it as a show.
Okay.
So, I mean, it already is. So the only question was, is it going to get its own name? Otherwise, it's just going to keep being whenever we gather on this show. I don't care. But
what did I just see?
Mutanda, much love. And why he's the only one getting that, I don't know, but I'm good with that. Much love to Mutanda.
You know,
dark skin tax.
Dark skin tax. You know what I'm saying? They're in at the moment.
That's messed up. That's messed up.
We're all just jealous.
Football and liberation. Football is life, like that character said on that stupid show. Ball chasing.
Yeah,
the worst.
Shout out to Diallo.
That's not bad. That's not bad. That's a front runner for sure.
Chasing Dr. Ball's opinions. Okay, gentlemen. No, but I feel like Diallo probably has copyright on that.
Man, we ain't worried about Diallo. We pay him enough already as it is. Enough with Diallo, concerned about Diallo, with all this love for Diallo in the chat. I didn't appreciate that either. Got to deal with him enough as it is. We'll be in Jackson, Mississippi on the 17th of August, by the way, live, if folks want to come out and see us and hang out with Skip Coon. So, more than a game. I'm not mad at that either.
It's not bad.
But Ball Chasers is pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, everybody. Peace if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. Catch you next time right here at
More Than a Sport.
I like that too. And I hit the wrong button. So we can I'll just real quick. Catch you next time here at hit the wrong button again.
Peace
so
out.
Catch you next time here at I mix what I like.
What do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.